Well, happy Monday, everybody, everywhere. I want to say thank you all so very much for being on with us tonight. Um, Sorry, I was hearing myself echoing for some reason. Well, I want to say thank you all so very much for being on tonight. Sincerely appreciated. Do me a favor and pause wherever you are to invite somebody, share this with somebody, tell somebody else to join. Send the likes. Let's make sure that we're sharing this right away. I want you to share it early. I have epic expectations about what's going to happen tonight, about how the conversation tonight is going to go. And so I have epic expectations about it, about how to go and what's going to happen tonight. Each and every week has been incredible. We have had so many different people who decided to join these and to participate and engage in these together with me on Monday nights. These are very intentional times where you have the opportunity to learn, to listen, to ask questions, to glean from people who, honestly, for one piece, let's be clear, everyday people who are just like you, in a sense of we all have challenges, we all have problems, we all have obstacles. Now, they may look different at times, they may come in different forms. However, the principles remain that it is possible to overcome obstacles. It is possible to become a barrier breaker. The question is, will you step up to the challenge? Will you embrace the task before you in order for us to ultimately become the person or the people we've been intended to be? All of us have some form of a purpose. Your existence on this planet is an answer to a problem. If nobody ever told you you are not here by accident, you are not here by cosmic coincidence. You're here on purpose, for purpose, and with a purpose. And maybe you haven't figured that purpose out yet. Maybe you're not experiencing it quite yet. Just keep trying. Well, I see some of you all are starting to share. I need you all to share. I'm gonna bring our guest on, but I need you to make sure you're doing your part of sharing this and of telling other people to hop on it. Why? Because I've heard parts of Regina's story. Now I'm excited to hear more of it personally, but I could have held that conversation over the phone. I want you all to be able to have other people be encouraged and inspired by Leandra Hill, Pastor Hill. Thank you for being on. And all of you all, go ahead and drop in the comments. Let me know you're here. Feel free. This is an open forum. At any point in time you have a question for our guests, feel free to drop it in the comments. And then to those who are watching back, you're not watching this live, to my replay crew, what's happening to you all? Some of you all are so faithful. You're so consistent. This time doesn't work for your schedule, but you hop back on. You pop back on every week. And I want to say thank you to you all. Well, listen, I'm going to move out of the way. I need a type of updates about what else is happening. I'll come back and give them to you at the end. Again, I am Teddy Matthews. Some of you all know me from different areas and different facets of life. I lead a church, Empowerment Church. I lead an organization, Empowerment Foundation, that's committed to social development and holistically raising up leaders and personal growth. I also do some coaching and some things. So some of the things that I'm passionate about in this next stretch of life for me is, in addition to the work that I do for church, hey Joy, in addition to the work I do for the church, I really want to move people toward their purpose. So whether you're watching this, you have any church affiliation or not, don't feel any pressure around that. This is about purpose. This is about your ability to become a barrier breaker. And so with no further ado, I want to bring on our guest. I'm going to introduce her. But before I do, I want to welcome her to the room. If you're in here, drop in the comments and say hello, send some hearts, send some likes. Let's bring Regina on in, and then I'll introduce her once we see her. There she goes, Regina Townsend. Welcome to the Barrier Breaking Monday. So glad
I done made it.
You done made it. I done made it, because you are an international Zoom presenter. You are an international keynote speaker. You everywhere all the time, and so I'm privileged to have you on here with me tonight. I count it a privilege, honestly. I mean, everything. Magazine writer, featured in articles these days, doing an incredible. Oh, here we go. Featured in Essence, Oprah, New York Times, The Root. women's health, and more. I'm excited to have you. How you feeling tonight?
I'm good. I rushed over here. I was like, when you were like, "Is today work?" Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Of course it does.
That's so awesome. Listen, these past several weeks we've had different guests. This is a newer venture for me, but it's one that has been going incredibly well. One of my major heartbeats, not even one of them, my major heartbeat is for life transformation. It's for people moving from where they are to where they can be. Wherever they've been is where they were. But I believe people overcome and get better through their belief system, of course, but also quicker. That I believe that process is accelerated through exposure, right? Mm-hmm. Through meeting other people with shared narratives, with the understanding of saying, I've been there, I had a similar experience, I understand it. And so each and every week, my goal has been to bring on a different person. Some people who watch these hear from me regularly. Some people who watch these don't hear from me. But these nights are not about me at all. They're about me lending whatever influence I have to allow other people to hear about other people's experiences, to hear about the great work that's happening in local communities as well as around the globe, and then be able to give some empowerment, some encouragement, some inspiration. And so I'm going to introduce you and I'm going to let you do what you do. But I want to say thank you for being here. And I love when I got bios like this, because I know a little bit about you too. So this is going to be good. I need y'all to listen here to this bio. Listen, Regina Townsend is a professional youth librarian. Everybody's not a professional. She has the degrees in librarianism. She is a professional youth librarian. She is a health blogger and infertility advocate. She's passionate about bringing to light the struggle of infertility in the African American community specifically, and believes in connecting people to make the resources they need to make health informed decisions. I can't wait to dig into that. That's just so key and critical on so many fronts. To that end, she is the founder of the Broken Brown Egg, an internationally recognized infertility advocacy organization. As a blogger and infertility advocate, she uses words and outreach to provide support and resources to those who have been affected by reproductive health difficulties and their mental, social, and emotional impact. I feel like that gets so lost so many times. I'd love to see the work you're doing around that. Regina believes in providing representation, compassion, and transparency. As a board member for Fertility Within Reach, Regina hopes to provide families and individuals with the tools they need to become empowered in their journey toward parenthood, while also being able to look at advocacy efforts through the minority lens. We need representation everywhere, anywhere, and we need more people like you stepping up to the plate. Her player 2 and player 3, my main man, is Jabari, her husband, and their long-awaited son, the blessed Judah. I love them both dearly. I love the Townsend family. Y'all do me a favor. If you know how to use some emojis, drop some clapping emojis in the chat. Drop some, hit some likes if you can. You're watching on YouTube. Give us the thumbs up. Let us know you rock. Regina, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. I see people in the chat that I know and love. Thank you guys for joining us. I appreciate it. This is awesome. First of all, what you've been doing with these Barrier Breaking Mondays has been amazing. I think I only missed like one because I was at work or something. But I'm just honored to be included. I really am.
Absolutely. For me, I think sometimes we limit. This is one challenge I feel like I'm called to help break, is sometimes we minimize or we forget about certain individuals that are making significant impact because it's not the normal areas that impact is being made. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that it's not significant. All of the causes that you stand for are not just monumental, but they're so often overlooked and negated and neglected. And so from the day I met you and you began to share a bit of your story with me, and I began to find out what you were doing and what some of your hopes and your vision was, I told you then, and I tell you now, one of my determined goals is to make sure that you are able to carry out everything that's inside of you because the world needs it. And so this is just one area in which I hope to use my influence, but you already know I'm putting you to work. But we got some stuff coming this year that they haven't seen that's going to take them by storm, but it's because there's so much in you. So I want to talk about what all is in you. Tell us a little bit about yourself beyond this bio. And I ask you some questions.
Well, I am a professional librarian. I'm a teen librarian in Forest Park. I've been a teen librarian there for almost 10 years this May. And I've been working in advocacy. Really being a librarian taught me about advocacy, because when you're a librarian for teens and kids, these are young people that don't often get heard. You're telling them what to read. You're telling them they need to be in this reading bracket. You're telling them they need to read some on these points. So advocacy was already there with what I do professionally. And then in terms of the broken brown egg, when Jabari and I first got married, we got married very young. We got married at 23. And I did not know, and I don't think he knew either, that there was such a thing as infertility in the Black community. We had never realized that people experienced it, because the narrative in our community is that we have more than enough children, that we actually need to be policed about our bodies and told what to do with our bodies, as opposed to educated on our bodies. And so when we realized we were having trouble, I started looking for blogs, looking for websites, looking for some kind of representation and information. And it was all white women. It was all white women. There were no men. There were no Black men. And I just kept feeling like, well, then is something wrong with me? Because I don't understand why I'm not seeing me. And so one day I went online and I just started saying what I was thinking, which is, that aunt who doesn't have any children, maybe she couldn't. So maybe stop asking people. And maybe that person who's always the one that's leading the youth and taking them all these places, maybe they wanted kids and they can't have them. So don't ask people those intrusive questions. And I started getting all these messages from people that were like, thank you for saying that. I never had a chance to say that. And that's when I knew this is something that I need to really sit in and really start acknowledging the fact that it's not that Black people don't experience these things. It's that Black people don't discuss these things. And I felt like, well, if somebody got to talk, I'll talk.
So you dropped so much. If anybody's watching this, or whoever's watching this, whether you're watching this live or watching this back, something I haven't encouraged as much as I should have is I want to make sure you all are not, one, I want you engaged in these comments, but I want you definitively taking notes, because she dropped so many nuggets even in that statement. Because one of them is a cultural insensitivity that we have specifically as a people, but not exclusively as a people, right? I think it's like it goes across the board.
Yeah.
And some of the most insensitive things that can be said do tend to come from a different demographic. But some of the things that are said unintentionally, but are incredibly offensively said, are like in our own families, those who look like us. And they just say things like you said. Again, I could only imagine what that idea must be like. Say, why you ain't got, again, I was in church my whole life. So I was like, why you ain't got kids yet? Y'all ain't trying?
And it comes in so many situations that people don't even realize. So at back to school time, everybody's posting their children's back to school pictures. For somebody, those are painful to see. Mother's Day, painful. Halloween, painful. I was just leading a support group an hour before this, and we were talking about the baby on board signs on the car. Like, those things are triggering. And the thing about infertility is you don't know what's going to trigger you until it happens. So you're kind of getting pummeled all day, because you don't know that when you get to work, there's a baby shower in the break room. And you don't know that your baby sister is going to be pregnant while you were trying. And you don't know. So you don't know where these things are coming from. And there are also a lot of people I deal with who work with kids. And kids have no filter. So if you're a teacher who's been doing infertility treatments or just trying to figure out what's going on, and you have kids going, Miss Regina, you don't have no kids. You don't want no kids. Like, those kind of things are happening. And I think especially in our community, we don't recognize that sometimes we get way too familiar and we say things to each other without thinking. Or even in the church, we say things to people about God's time and this, that, and the other. And it hurts people. It makes people question where they stand with God, as opposed to encouraging them. And I think that was another area that I found was in so much need infertility affects 1 in 8 couples. So why isn't it talked about?
1 in 8.
7.3 million people in the United States are affected with infertility. 1/3 female, 1/3 male factor, and 1/3 is considered unexplained, meaning they don't even know why it's not working.
Repeat that again. Repeat that again.
In terms of infertility in the United States, it affects 1 in 8 couples. That's 7.3 million people. And when it comes to the reasons, 1/3 is contributed by something that is not working properly in a woman's body. 1/3 is things that are not working properly in the male's body. And 1/3 is considered completely unexplained. They have no idea why it's not working.
Wow. That's, I mean, if you're watching this and those numbers don't surprise you, I hope it's only because you happen to know them. Other than that, as well informed as I like to think I am in some regards, I had no clue of how high that number is, and I definitely had no clue around how there's this unexplainable category.
Mm-hmm. People who are going to the doctor with getting no answers. And when it comes to the Black community, which is why I realized that that's where I needed to focus, it's even more of an isolation because we don't talk about it. And then when you do go to a fertility clinic, we're not on the advertisements. We're not on the publicity. We're not, when you go in there, they have pictures of the babies that have come from that clinic. There's no Black babies up there. So when you go in there, you feel like something's really wrong with me. And I also realized that this was affecting us in terms of adoption and foster care. How many of us in the Black community have said things like, there's something wrong with kids in foster care. You don't want them kids, or we don't give our kids away. Those are real statements that people were telling me they were being told by family members. We don't give our kids away. Meanwhile, half of us, if not more, know at least one person in our family who just took in your cousin, who just took in. So we've been doing adoption going all the way back to slavery. If someone was sold from their family, where did you think those kids went? We've been doing foster care and adoption forever. It was the awareness and the speaking about it that was missing.
Wow, I'm not gonna let you just drop that on there because you just educated us. For those who didn't catch it, let me give it to you. She said it very educated. Let me give it to you in layman's terms. What she just said are those who may be watching this or those who may know people who are ignorant by definition. Unaware of these realities. By definition, ignorant doesn't just mean rude. Ignorant also means unaware and uninformed. So those who are ignorant by definition, uninformed by definition, sometimes specifically in our community, but not exclusively, but specifically, there's this notion or this stigma around adoption and foster care as if we don't take in Pookie or Ray Ray or let our cousins or our nieces come live with us until they become adults anyway. So there's this stigma that can exist against the system doing it, if I just heard you correctly, as if it doesn't already happen anyway, without even realizing the impact and the implications of the 7.3 million people who are affected and impacted by this.
Yeah. And then we have this disconnect because we'll have people who do finally say they want to get pregnant or they want to have children, and people will tell them something like, well, just adopt. There's all these kids that need homes. Why won't you just adopt? Without realizing that, number one, what you're doing right there is dehumanizing those babies and calling them consolation prizes. You're basically saying, well, since you couldn't do what you want to do, go pick up one of those. So that's one issue. The second issue is I think people still believe there are orphanages around where you can just go pick up a baby, when in fact, adoption costs just as much as fertility treatments. In some cases, I know people who paid up to $20,000 or have had to do fundraising or get a grant just to do that. So when we say things, we have to think about the impact of it and what people are emotionally dealing with. It is not about babies. I tell people all the time, it's bigger than babies. There's an emotional impact. There's a financial impact. It affects marriages. It affects self-esteem. It's deep. It's deep.
So while you're there, would you mind speaking to us a bit as someone who has experienced it, it's your lived experience, it's your shared truth. But I think that my hope is it provides some form of a communal experience for those who may have never walked through it to at least hear about it. And then potentially for those who may be, you just by chance, but with the numbers being so high, by chance, someone else may see this and become encouraged by part of your testimony. Would you mind just sharing a bit of that?
I hope so. I think when it comes to me and Jabari's experience, we didn't know what was going on. We knew that I was having some hormonal issues. We knew that there was something off, but we weren't clear on why. And so my first doctor that I went to, she said, well, here's this medication she gave me called Clomid, and it's supposed to help with ovulation. So ovulation is when the egg is released. So it's supposed to make you ovulate. She gave me the medication. She gave me no information about it. She didn't do any kind of testing. She just gave me the medication. And when I came back, she said, well, are you pregnant? And when I said no, she said, okay, well, here's this other medication. And she gave me metformin. And metformin is, most people know of it as a diabetic drug, and it's to help with insulin resistance. Again, no testing, no ultrasound, no explanation, nothing. So I went to researching on my own because I got to use this library degree. And I went to researching on my own, and I started looking up thyroid issues, polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, fibroids. So those are big umbrella terms, but those things are affecting Black women at higher rates, including, especially, and I forgot to mention this, infertility itself affects Black women at 2 times a higher rate than white women. So I finally started the blog because I was like, I need to get these feelings out and I need to connect. And a doctor was here with his wife. They were visiting Chicago and they invited me to lunch. And when we were at lunch, he said, have you asked your doctor about polycystic ovary syndrome? And I said, no, I don't know what that is. And basically, polycystic ovary syndrome is when the woman's ovaries are collecting a lot of cysts. They're benign, but there are a lot of cysts. And it also affects weight. It causes insulin resistance. It causes multitude of different things. It causes hair loss and facial hair growth. It's a hormonal imbalance on steroids, basically. And so he told me to ask my doctor about it. And when I went to the doctor and I said, I think it might be PCOS, I told her and she laughed and she said, it's not that, everybody thinks they're a doctor these days because they go on Google, and she just dismissed it. And I was so dejected. And at the time I didn't realize this is what's happening to Black people all over, and not just in this country, all over. When we go to the doctor, even when we try to be informed patients, we're not believed, we're not listened to, we're dismissed. So I encourage people, put your phone on speakerphone when you go to the doctor. Have a friend, a spouse, a parent that's listening. When we get back to quote unquote normal, take somebody with you, because that way when someone dismisses you or minimizes you, you have backup that can say, wait a minute, slow down. So when she laughed it off, I had to have a follow-up appointment. And when I called, she wasn't available. And I said, well, can I see a different doctor? Because again, and even then I was ashamed. But again, as Black people, we're not taught that you can change doctors. You can say, I disagree. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I didn't realize. I felt bad. Like, is the doctor going to know? They work for you. So I changed doctors. I went to a different doctor. And when she came and she went over everything, I kind of tested her and I said, well, I think it might be PCOS. And she said, I think you're right. If that's what you feel, let's look into it. And I stuck with her ever since. And we realized that it was polycystic ovary syndrome. And she gave us more medication. And then when nothing was working again, she gave me what's called an HSG test. That's a hysterosalpingogram. And what that is they shoot dye into your ovaries and your fallopian tubes to see if there are blockages. And we found that both of my fallopian tubes are completely blocked. So there was never any way that any of those other medications were going to work.
Wow.
Because there was no way for sperm to meet egg at all. Because
there was never any checks, never any systems, never any exam.
Yep.
Just take this medication.
Here's some medication.
Now I want you to keep going, but I want those of you all who are watching to be clear. Regina is sharing her story of infertility and some of her struggles that she overcame through that. But those of you who are watching this, while that may not be the thing that you have to grow through and experience, let us be clear. This is a definitive shared experience, specifically, but not exclusively, for African Americans in healthcare in general. I want to be clear. I want to make sure that I don't want anybody to have like, oh, this is good, but this doesn't apply to me. No, I would encourage you to stay on, because this is a universal. Would you agree with me? This is a universal healthcare concern.
Yes, it's a social justice issue. It's a reproductive health issue. Reproductive health is health. So the same thing is if you go to a therapist and you're telling them this is how you feel and they dismiss it. If you are losing weight and you're like, I know this isn't me, what's going on? And they dismiss it. If you take your kids to the doctor and they dismiss it, that's a problem. And you have the right to say, I disagree. You have the right to say, I would like to speak to your supervisor. We don't think like that when we go to the doctor, because we think, well, they're the doctor. They know what they're talking about. They went to medical school. They went to medical school, but they're still a person who is working a job. And you have the right to evaluate whether or not that's working for you. And I don't think we talk enough about that. It's in any form of your health. If you feel you're not heard, say something. And if you don't, I tell people also, when you go to the doctor, take a pen and a pad and a plan, because your healthcare is a team sport. You're not just going to listen to what they say and then you go pick up your prescription. No, you're living in that body. So when you go to the doctor, you should come in like you would an interview. Okay, so here's my concerns. And what do you think? And what can we do? It's a team sport. So after she found out that both of our tubes were blocked, she said, Regina, I know you don't want to do IVF, which is in vitro fertilization. She said, I know you don't want to do that, but you've done everything you can. There's really no other way to get around these issues. And so she gave us a referral, and we went to a fertility center here, and we then started to find out how much it cost, because infertility is not a covered thing in every state. Thankfully, in Illinois, it is covered by insurance, but in every state, it's not. Out of all of the states, I believe only 16 have fertility coverage included and mandated. So Illinois, grateful, Illinois was covered. And when we went, they started laying out the cost. And you're paying for medication. You're paying for cryopreservation of specimens. You're paying for additional labs, tests. And they start listing all that out, and it starts racking up into the thousands. And then they start asking you questions that you weren't prepared for. Like, well, if you or your spouse pass away, where do the embryos go? If you get divorced, who gets this? You're like, well, this escalated quick. This escalated quickly.
Sure.
But those things are what's in that conversation. So when you compound that with, I'm a Black person, and I don't know that I can talk to anybody about this. I don't know anybody in my family who's dealt with this. I don't have anybody to talk about after this consultation with. My spouse and I may not be seeing eye to eye because they may not want to do all of this. That's another issue that people have, is one partner wants to do the further medical treatments and the other partner's like, that's weird for me. So when you're dealing with all of the racial parts, you're also untrusting of doctors because you've already dealt with implicit bias. And then they're laying out all these questions. It is absolutely an emotional situation. And I try to tell people infertility is traumatic. It is a situation where who you thought you were is called into question. You thought, well, I'm going to get married. I got married young. I got a job. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Things don't work. Okay, so where do I stand now? Or if you're someone who is very much in the church, where you feel like, I pray, I fast, I tithe, I do everything I'm supposed to do. Why isn't this working? Is God angry with me? Has God forgotten me? All of these different things are happening, and you got to make decisions and then go to work, work a job, be nice, be married, be nice to your spouse, all these other things.
Wow.
So we went through all of that, and then my job changed insurance carriers, and I lost access to the clinic. And we were like, well, what do we do now? And we had a relative who was pregnant, and she said that she didn't think she'd be able to parent. And she reached out and asked if we would step in as adoptive parents. And we prayed about it, prayed with family about it, and we decided to do that. And then when we were in the parking lot to pick the baby up, she had a change of heart. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, well, what now? And so we went home, unsure of what to do. And we got a call from DCFS, and they asked if we would be foster parents of that baby until she could take her home. And so we agreed to step in and do that. And we fostered her for 6 months. And then after that experience, we were kind of like, okay, what are we going to do? Because this is wearing us out. And this is why I will also say it's important to pay attention to God's assignment and notice the nuggets of what he's been doing all along the way. Because I had been in the midst of all this. I still had the blog. I was still writing about this. I was still advocating. And at the library, I was hosting events about how to get to parenthood, paths to parenthood. So I would have somebody from DCFS, an adoption attorney, somebody from the Cradle, which is an adoption agency here in Illinois, and a reproductive endocrinologist. And those are the doctors who help with fertility.
Okay. And Regina, I don't want to cut you off. I want you to stay right there. I want everybody who's watching this, though, whether you're watching this live or watching this back, to realize what Regina is saying. She's saying now, while she was going through this, she's documenting and writing out her experiences as she's going through it. Sometimes we don't write about or tell our story until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so, you're saying it, and I'm sure you're going to say so much more that I don't want to miss that note, because I think that's key and critical. Like, as you were going through it, you were cataloging it, and I would presume gave you something to look back at when it was continued.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go to the brokenbrownegg.org right now, you can read those blog posts from that time. And so when I was having these events at the library, I had one, and this was right after we had turned the baby back over, and we're still dealing with the heartbreak from that, still dealing with the aftermath from that. And the doctor, the reproductive endocrinologist, said, well, Regina, what's going on with you guys? Because I know last time you were seeing this fertility center. Did you get pregnant? Did anything happen? And I was like, nothing happened. And I told her basically everything that had gone on in the past year. And she said, well, come see me. I'll take your insurance. Come see me, because this has gone on too long for you to still be in this. Come see me. I'll take your insurance. Come next week. Let's get something going. And I went home and I told Jabari, and we were both like, well, that was unexpected. But he was like, let's go. So we went. And when we went, it was like a completely different experience. She was looking at the same chart. She was looking at the same information, but her demeanor was very much so, this is fixable. We can get around this. Let's do that. You know what? Let's go across the hall and do the testing for this. Let's get this set up. And it just started moving from there. And we were able to do IVF. We did a paint and sip to raise money for medication. We applied for a grant. We did all kind of stuff to make sure we could afford it. And then it just so happened that the insurance covered most of it. We ended up spending like $4 on medication after everything was said and done. And we did IVF. We did one round. We transferred one embryo. And now that is Judah Emmanuel, praise God with us.
Wow.
It means praise God with us. And he is the middle-aged man that you know, but he is just so, he's people may say he's spoiled, but they don't understand it took 10 years to get him. So when he's saying stuff, we're just so amazed that he exists that we may miss the fact that he probably should have been in trouble. But we're just like, he's a real human. He exists. Because throughout the time, there was so many times where I just felt like, and I was angry with God, and I would tell him so. And I think that was another turning point, is that I was angry with God, but I would tell him so. I would say, Lord, you said this. Lord, you showed me this. So why isn't this working? And you told me this, and you led me to this. And then when the adoption fell through, I said, okay, Lord, I give up, because maybe you just want me to be the aunt and the godmother and this and the that, and you don't want me to have this. And I was so angry. And then God started giving me things of just like, I will never leave you or forsake you. I'm here the whole time. I'm sitting in it with you. And I look at things now, like Judah and that baby are now best, but because they're cousins. So when he's visiting, that's his best friend. And I look at who she is, and I think, Regina, pay attention to what you and Jabari may have placed in her during those 6 months that makes her who she is right now. But you can't see that when you're in it. When you're in it, you're just wondering, where is God? And you don't realize that he's in it with you. You don't see
that's so good. That's so good. You know, and I try not to interject too much in these, but you know, you're saying so much, and I want to make sure they're getting it. For those of you who are watching this, and everybody who watches these back, they may not have the same faith beliefs as us, which is, you're entitled to that. However, there is a truth that was just shared, and that is, I taught a series in September, I think it was, of 2020, around I Am Not Okay. And in it, I taught this notion about how grief, the word we use for loss of something, but grief being the price we pay for caring. And that anytime we are absent or lose something we care about, or cannot have something we care about, we go through grief. Now, whether we choose to grieve is another subject matter, but we cannot adequately, this is what I heard you say, is what made me bring this up, is we can't adequately like function or pursue or continue to go unless we have an empty heart. So you what you said was, you felt a way, you were mad, you were frustrated, you were angry, but you emptied your heart. So it wasn't just harbored here. It was, you're a person of faith. You say, look, I'm gonna channel this to the person who my faith tells me is supposed to handle this. And when you did that, you got a feeling and a response back that reminded you, now that you've given me this, let me lead you forward.
Let me show you where I was the whole time. Let me remind you. And I would write these things down, and I keep them on my board to myself. And I would think, like, you know, I've told you this. I used to struggle with wondering, is it God talking or is it me talking or whatever? But when I look back, some of those things had to have been God. There were things that God placed in my heart, like, don't you know you're the prayer of sharecroppers? Don't you know that you're the prayer of slaves? Don't you know I can't lie to them, so those prayers I'm still answering? Don't you know anybody I told in your family that their legacy would be through it? That means that I'm going to continue to do it. I can't lie. So the word is still working. So if I told your grandmother that her legacy was going to be fruitful, it's going to work. If I told your mother that it's going to be fruitful, I didn't lie to her either, it's going to work. And so I had to really get comfortable with recognizing my worth, because that's the other thing. And I've heard you mention it a lot, but that is the thing that makes it difficult sometimes when we think about barrier breaking, is that you don't think you're worth it, and you don't think that you're enough, and you're waiting to get to some point where then I'll be enough, and then you were born enough.
How did you practically work through that? How did you get to the place where you began to really, whether it was discover or remind yourself, for those, like, what was your process of that? Like, I know it was writing, but just so that everybody might not have the same ears I have. So what was your process for rediscovering your worth, reminding yourself, you and Jabari's process together? I'm sure it's a process. So I
still work on it. I write to myself. I write letters to myself from God. I write, I keep in my phone, I keep promises from God. I look through scriptures for things that he said. You know, the one scripture that always worked with me is Psalm 138:8. The Lord will perfect that which concerns me. The Lord will perfect that which concerns me. And I kept reminding myself that, like, he's going to perfect what concerns me. If it's not perfected, it's not done. So don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. And I still do that. We have embryos still in cryopreservation that we have to decide what we're going to do with. And those things we struggle with now, with people saying, well, when are you going to have more kids? And they don't know what it took to get that one. Or if they say, you know, well, y'all can have my kids when they're frustrated, things like that. We don't realize how we're triggering each other.
So it's so insensitive.
Yeah. And we don't think about it. So I start writing things out to myself. And also the Broken Brown Egg is my outlet. It's where I get to post what I'm thinking in the hopes of freeing somebody else so that they understand you're not alone, because you feel really alone. You feel like nobody else is dealing with this. And truth be told, when you start talking about it to your comfort level, you find out that more people than you think are dealing with it. They just haven't. You know, I was just in something last week where we were talking about how two guys that were friends had no idea that they were both dealing with the same infertility struggles in their marriage until they both ended up with children. And then they were like, yeah, this took this long. They had never discussed it. Never discussed it. And this is a health issue too. So when in regards to my health and reminding myself that I'm worthy of my body working right. God didn't design me faulty. He didn't make me incorrectly. So this is not anything for me to be ashamed of. This is something that we need to address and fix. And it took me a while to get to that, but I work on it daily, reminding myself who I am and whose I am, reminding myself who Judah is, reminding myself who Jabari is, thinking about the things that we felt were delays and looking back and seeing the children that we were able to influence during those almost 10 years because we didn't have our own kids. In that moment, it felt heavy, but we've been the house where kids spend the night. We take kids to the zoo. We're the ones that take kids to the museum. I don't know that we would have been doing that to the extent that we have if we had had kids earlier. I also don't know that we would be the parents we are had we not gone through this. We're very big on Judah's mental health. Judah wears glasses at 4 years old because after dealing with infertility, I was not going to allow a doctor to tell me that she disagreed with me about whether or not he needed to go to the eye doctor. When I looked at his eyes and I said, I think something's wrong, and she disagreed, I remembered that doctor laughing about me saying that I had PCOS, and I thought, not him. He's not going to have bad eyesight because I let you make me question me. So you learn things along the way. You can't see them in the middle. I tell people it's like being on a chessboard. You see the pieces, you see the moves in front of you, but God sees the board. He's looking down. So he sees where you can go, even if you can't. You think you can't move. And he's like, you finna have a checkmate in like 2 weeks if you relax.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I mean, you shared so much right there. I mean, I think that there's a notion one around self-worth, and I think there's a piece here for anybody who's watching this you have to get. She's talked about how her mindset toward how her individual worth made her also say, my body is a temple that is supposed to work functionally. And specifically in our community, again, I never want to make it like I'm against anybody else, specifically, not exclusively, within our community and within our generation, like fighting for optimal health is just not a thing. It's like, yeah, well, this was just passed down. And like, no, but it's supposed to work though.
It's supposed
to work. It may not have worked with them, but it's supposed to. It's like, yeah, no. So I'm dealing with some things now with you've heard me talk about it with these chronic headaches I've had for over a decade. Some back alignment stuff and some body ache type stuff. And, you know, it wasn't until maybe 2 years ago, I was like, no, I'm determined to get an answer. Like, you're not going to, I refuse to live. Yeah, I was like, at this age, I refuse to live off of medications, medications that don't fix the problem, but treat my symptom.
Yes. Because that's what other people are dealing with too, is that I would get, so for me, I felt like I was the woman with the issue of blood. That's why I connect to that story every time I hear it, because that was my life. And I was always in the emergency room, always going to the doctor, always trying to get some help. And they would give me birth control pills. Well, birth control pills will stop the period, but they don't address maybe why I'm bleeding 2 months in a row. They don't address, like, that's not going to fix what the problem is, nor is it even going to look into what the problem is. And with Black women, there's also a higher rate of us receiving hysterectomies. There's a higher rate of us having fibroids, which are also uterine tumors. Like, there are women that we see that are walking around that look 5 and 6 months pregnant, and they're not pregnant. They have tumors that people are dismissing. People are not encouraging them to get a second opinion or even telling them that there are options. They're jumping straight to hysterectomy. And I just feel like that was the other thing of, like, being relentless about getting an answer, being relentless about recognizing I know my body and I know myself. That was, like, huge, because we're not taught that. Inherently, we're not taught that. You go to the doctor, you get in and out, and Black people in general, and I know we being, fair, but Black people in general,
Black people, you can do it by all means. This is why you're
Black
here.
People in general, we have a valid mistrust of the medical community.
Absolutely.
To which I can say, as someone who works in this community, that we have people who are trying to address it. But this is why I tell people it's not good to so quickly dismiss those who are against things like the vaccine. Educate them, yes, but let's not forget why those feelings are there.
Yes,
we have
a valid trust.
It's valid. We have the man who is considered the father of gynecology, came to his inventions by experimentation on enslaved Black women without anesthesia. So the medications, the speculum, all of these things that we're using in current gynecological practice were invented by someone who found these things by experimentation on Black women.
Wow.
Without anesthesia.
Take us to school, librarian.
So these kind of things, when you try to make people feel guilty, or like, right now I'm working with Black millennials for Flint on something for National Infertility Awareness Week in April. And I was looking at some information they posted about how, people in Flint still don't have clean water. And you want them to trust the vaccine. You have to work with them. We have people who will quote the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, which, let me just say, they did not give Black people syphilis. The Tuskegee experiment was the willful neglecting of giving treatment to people who already had syphilis. Also, syphilis is not only a sexually transmitted disease, it can be passed down congenitively. So the problem was not that they gave Black people syphilis and that was the issue. No, it's that they had treatment and they weren't going to give it to Black people because they were studying how syphilis affects people. So our mistrust is very, very valid. But that is something we should be working to encourage those in the medical community to address. Like right now in Broke Bread Egg, my post for tonight was, doctors, can we trust you? And not just you. Can we trust your staff? Can we trust your phlebotomist, the person who takes my blood? Can I trust the people who are in charge of giving me my prescriptions? Can we trust them? Because we have reports right now of Black people being told that they don't need medication and that their pain isn't, because up until maybe 2 years ago, medical students were still being taught that Black people experience pain differently. So when Black women were going in saying, I am in pain, they were being accused of wanting narcotics, accused of wanting to resell, accused of lying. So that mistrust is valid. And that's why I push, this is bigger than babies. If I had never dealt with infertility, I would have no idea about all of these things. This is a social justice issue. This is a reproductive justice issue. We have, people who were being detained by ICE that were being given hysterectomies without their consent or knowledge. Fannie Lou Hamer, who's one of our people that I highlighted for Black History Month, who's a known civil rights activist, and she started her activism because she had received a hysterectomy without her consent or knowledge as well. So this has been happening to us for a long time. A long time. We have to talk about these things so that we can address them. And there are so many people in our midst who feel unsupported, unseen, unheard, unloved, unworthy. And if we can get, this is when we talk about the root versus the symptom, for a lot of people, this is the root, is that something like this happened to them. It doesn't have to be infertility, but something like this happened to them that affected where they see themselves in the scope of the world. And now the symptoms that you see are they mean and nasty. They don't have no follow through. They late for work every day. They not coming to the family events no more. They don't want to talk to you on the phone. And we're addressing those symptoms, saying they funny acting, they don't know how to act, they this, they that. And nobody is addressing the root. That she's been in surgery for endometriosis twice and nobody checked. That he wants kids, but as a Black man, he's not supposed to want kids, so he don't have nobody to tell that. All of these things are things I get in my inbox, and it's like, it makes me just want to yell. It makes me want to yell.
So I'm gonna stop right here. So first of all, if any of you are watching, I've kept Regina a bit longer than I keep most of our guests. I'm gonna do that if you don't mind. I'm gonna borrow a little more of your time. If you all are watching, if you have any questions, because this is just, she's dropping so much knowledge that whenever Oprah interviews her, I'm gonna feel like I did a better job, but I feel like Oprah needs to do it so that she can get more significant influence watching it. But this is what, so I want, if you have any questions, please drop those in those comments so we can see them. But I also want to just kind of really note the work that you're doing, the thoroughness of your studies. Like, you're not just saying you're committed to this. It's clear, it's academic, it's thorough, it's researched. And for this is for those who are watching this that want to go after a cause. If you're gonna say you're gonna throw yourself at something, you need to throw yourself at something or get with somebody else who is. Because there's nobody right now who I imagine could get on here and argue against these facts that are being stated. Which is why I wanted to have you on tonight, is because you don't just, it's not just theoretical. It's factual, it's statistical data. It's what your shared experience is. It's what other people are experiencing presently. There's somebody very, very close to me right now that when they went to the ER last night, they were about to send them home until she called me. I said, no, don't you go home. Well, they came back and said, wait a minute. We think we got to have gallstones removed.
Yep.
Everybody said, go home. If the pain medicine don't, their exact words were, go home. We're going to give you a little medicine. If the medicine don't work, come back.
If I'm alive to come back. If I'm alive to come back.
So after running a few more tests, it was, no, we can't release you to go home. We need to figure this out, run some more tests. And then we're going to have to do surgery. The question is, how extensive is the surgery going to have to be?
And I would have been at home in pain, thinking that there's something wrong with me. I remember one night I was at Provident. I'm going to just go ahead and call them out. I was at Provident. And I was there with my mother, and I was there with Jabari, and we had been there for so long and nobody had even treated me that I remember just saying, let's just go. And I stood outside that hospital, just cried. And I told my mom, I said, nobody can help me. They don't want to help me. Nobody can help me. So let's just go. And I felt so defeated. And that's why I do what I do, because there is somebody feeling that on every inch of this planet, there is somebody feeling that nobody wants to help me. I'm not worth being helped. Nobody's going to help me. They told me it's nothing, and I know it's something, but nobody believes me. It's very real. It's very real, and especially in our community, especially.
Wow. Mike Burries, I see you're commenting. Yeah, Mike, people may have whatever their feelings or sentiment is, but I think the world of you, sir. I think the world of the work you're doing. I think that many advocates that have you and Regina's acumen up here are misunderstood because you're passionate. But The same way I throw my support at Regina, Mike, I've told you, I'm not just lip service. I throw my same support towards you if we can find a way to just get it done. Because that's somebody who else I would love to have on when I'm not just showcasing women, who's incredible brother in terms of this prison, the
pipeline to prison
conversation, and just the mishandling of the educational system specifically for our African American community. And I mean, he's got data for days that points to it all there.
It's all connected.
It is, because I mean, it's so, and here's what I am at least excited about for me during this stretch of time. I feel like where I want to throw the weight of what my influence and responsibility is to be able to take whatever influence I've been given already, whatever influence is continuing to come, and to not use it to do anything but to, as a church, as a pastor, to point people toward Jesus, but as a spiritual leader and as a thought partner with people to say, listen, ultimately my convictions about the Bible come from my convictions about people. They all work together to say that life should be about not just settling for less than what we should be experiencing. My convictions of that come from my faith. My faith points me to that conviction to say that, no, there's another world. There's another level of experience. There's actually a transformed world that we could experience if we take people like Regina or take people like Mike who comments, or those who else have been commenting in the comments, to say, listen, what would it look like to raise barrier breakers, to be world changers, to invade and to impact, and to not do it one by one, but to grab arms with other entities, to grab arms with other organizations, to say, listen, together, they cannot deny this collective power of everybody that's coming together to say this is wrong. I was on a call earlier with Commissioner Brandon Johnson for the first district of Cook County. And it was around this COVID vaccine. And it was several of us on, he hosted a town hall, but it was great. But he was clear while there were doctors on there from the Cook County Vaccination Committee and all that kind of, he was clear around, listen, this mistrust that exists is valid. So what are we going to do to address it?
Address it. Yes. As opposed to, villainizing those who are saying they don't want to do it. What are we going to do to educate? Because what I will tell you that is not going to be broadcast is that others who aren't concerned and don't have that history of mistrust are going into our neighborhoods and getting that vaccine. There are people at Roseland Hospital who ain't never going to Roseland area ever again, but they going for that vaccine. And so since we're the ones that are being higher victimized by COVID, we need to be addressing. And these are environmental factors also. These are things that's why I say it's a social justice issue.
Absolutely.
Because people will quickly say, well, they just won't go to the doctor. They just, that, and the other. Why don't they just eat healthier? Why don't they just exercise? It's like, well, first of all, how many fitness centers are in those areas? Mm-hmm. Second of all, how safe is it for people to just walk and exercise? Mm-hmm. Third of all, how much of a food desert is that area? So we can't just brush across it with this broad brush. We have to look at the individual implicit biases and racism that cause these issues and address that, as opposed to turning the blame, because that's what happens to Black people all the time. If we get shot, it's what were you doing? Why weren't you doing what you were supposed to do? If we get pulled over police, why were you rude to the police officer? If something's wrong with our body, it's, well, why weren't you being more healthy? Everything that happens to us, we're in turn made the guilty party for it happening to us. I don't see that happening with anybody else. They're allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to have a problem. They're allowed to need a doctor. When it comes to us, it's like, well, why did you need a doctor? Why weren't you doing what you were supposed to do? It's like, why is that our story?
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Regina, listen, this has been absolutely incredible. I think those who are watching, those who know how to drop stuff in the chat, drop fire in the chat. Don't even drop no heart. Drop fire in the chat. This has been fire tonight. I want to see some flames and some fire. This has been incredible. You've educated us, but I think it's safe to say you've inspired us. I'm inspired. I think countless others who are watching this now will watch this back will be inspired. They're empowered. I feel like I got some tools. If nothing else, I know I'm worth it. I know I can write myself clear. I know I can empty my heart. I know I can keep pursuing. I know I can tell doctors, I will fire you and replace you with another doctor. like if they didn't walk away with some tools, it's not because you didn't give it. And I just want to say thank you, and thank you for your transparency. I know it's got it. I know for thank you. There go the hearts. Jabari, you ought to drop more hearts than that, Jabari. you spit hot fire. You spit hot fire
and dropping flame.
He get a pass. He get a pass. But you spit hot fire, son. Top 5 best rappers alive. Dylan. So, there we go. Yeah. So no, thank you so very much. If we could do this, just go ahead and share with us again how anyone could reach you if they want to get in touch or find out more information about you. And then to my team who's on here, I want to make sure something we add to the site. We're really building out this platform. So Barrier Breakers started as Barrier Breaking Monday. It's ultimately going to continue to carry out. I want to create a barrier breaking network.
Love it.
Where it's designed for people to be able to kind of get this information, to come to it and be able to see it, just kind of have it listed out. I'm not trying to lead everybody, none of that. It's just to have a collective and a community where we can just come and we can share these resources and kind of have this conversation and all that kind of stuff. But tell us how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So the Broken Brown Egg is on Facebook. You can also visit thebrokenbrownegg.org. And on Instagram, it's just Broken Brown Egg. And I also have a private support group on Facebook for those who need to just connect and feel like they are in a community of other people who get it. And I'm also actively working to do events and things. I always do a wine sip around Mother's Day, because that's one of the hardest days of the year for people who are dealing with this. And so we're going to do that again this year. So visit the Broken Brown Egg so that you can see what kind of things we have coming up. And National Infertility Awareness Week is in April. And I have a few different things that are going to be happening in April as well, highlighting the Black voice.
And by default, Empowerment Church does as well now. So whatever areas of platform we have are Broken Brown Egg partners. And so somebody mentioned that everybody donates to Regina's work. Absolutely. If you're watching this, I want you to go to the website. Can they donate via the website?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go to the website, donate there. For those who may be a part of our family, if you know how to give through some of our platforms, go to our stuff and notate it in there. But I'm committing to honestly throwing the weight of whatever resources we have toward this communal issue that's impacting in disproportionate rates our community, and nobody's having the conversation. No. And so this is, anybody who knows me, I'm not lip service. This is a beginning of a thing. And I look forward to all of this to come from the collaborative efforts and just the uniqueness of all that is within you. I believe in it incredibly. And I look forward to seeing how it is we continue to carry it on. Speaking of which, I hate to just drop bombs, but we got something coming up in April that is going to be May, that's going to be fire. I'm not telling too much about it, but tell what you feel like we can tell. But I want anybody who's watching to know it's going to be fire. I don't know any place is doing it.
What I will say is that Pastor Teddy and I both have a commitment to educating and advocating for mental health. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month. If you are someone who is interested in helping with something that is mental health related in May, reach out to the church, because we would love your support in this. If you are a therapist, we have a slate of things that we're trying to pull off. I'm not going to tell all of it, but if that is your passion, please reach out, because we would love to have your support, because this is how you change a community, is you help them change how they think.
So good. So good. Well, I'll let you all go. Thank you all for being on. Do me a favor. Don't keep this to yourself. Share it. Even with people who you feel like they might look at it and be like, why are they watching this? You don't know what they need. You don't know what they need. You don't know what they're going through, and you don't know what their family or their network may be going through. So don't stop it. Don't share it. Don't say no, or don't say they won't watch this for anybody. You share it and let them figure out what they do with the information. All right. Well, thank you all so much. We're going to end this broadcast. Regina, stay on for the back, and we'll talk to you later. Have an incredible night, everybody.